Families of Guatemalan migrants killed in Mexico begin to hold their funerals. Chad's president kicked off his campaign for a sixth term. And New Yorkers called justice for Breonna Taylor on the anniversary of her death. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the South. In Guatemala, relatives of the 16 Guatemalan migrants killed in Mexico have begun burying their loved ones. Family members and neighbors of El Fego Miranda Diaz accompanied his coffin through the streets of his hometown and buried him Saturday afternoon. The remaining murdered migrants are said to be buried Sunday as their families wanted more time to mourn. On January 22nd, Mexican authorities reported the discovery of 19 charred bodies inside a burned van in Camargo next to the U.S. border in an area scarred for years by wars between rival Mexican cartels.
People, my brother used to say, I will die with a flag in my chest. And that came to be, he returned in death with a flag wrapped around his chest.
Mexico has received the third shipment of COVID-19 vaccines. A batch of 1 million Chinese Sinovac vaccines arrived in Mexico City on Saturday. The Mexican government has inoculated older adults in poor areas of the country as part of its vaccination campaign that began in December. According to authorities, with the arrival of these doses, there are already more than 6.4 million vaccines that have landed in the nation. CARICOM has been allocated 1.8 million COVID-19 vaccines through the African Medical Supplies platform to distribute among the Caribbean nations. Barbados Foreign Minister Dr. Jerome Walcott said that his country is slated to be allocated 56,000 vaccines via this platform. Trinidad and Tobago also signed up to this initiative. TNT Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley announced that the Twin Island nation has secured 226,000 vaccines thanks to this offer. Bolivians have rallied outside the building of the country's special force for the fight against crime, where the former Inter-President Janine Áñez is being held following her arrest. Shouting justice, La Paz residents have demanded that Áñez be punished for participating in a coup that ousted former President Evo Morales. Áñez was arrested Saturday on terrorism and sedition charges over the 2018 coup. Police were also rounding up former ministers who backed the conservative politician government, including Áñez's former Energy Minister Rodrigo Guzmán and former Justice Minister Álvaro Coimbra.
We are asking for justice. We want a maximum penalty because there have been deaths. People have been injured and are still suffering in hospitals.
Former Peruvian President Martín Vizcarra has claimed foul play against his new candidacy for Congress after a prosecutor requested preventive prison for him. A prosecutor asked for 18 months of preventive prison for Vizcarra for allegedly taking bribes while he was a governor. A court in Lima is set to analyze the request. The former president is being investigated for allegedly accepting bribes of around $619,000 that he received from two local construction companies while he was governor of the Moquegua region from 2011 to 2014. Last November, Vizcarra was removed from the presidency by Parliament, which used the prosecutor's investigation as the main argument.
Less than a month before elections, someone asks for preemptive prison against a candidate of a party, which is the first option for Congress. As you have seen in the polls, I have walked all Lima since March 1st, and we have received an enormous support by the population.
Brazil's former president Luis Inácio Lula da Silva has received the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine at a drive-through vaccination center in São Bernardo do Campo.
I received the vaccine from the Butantan Institute, the CoronaVac. It's exactly the one I wanted to get. In 14 to 28 days, I will have the second dose. I would be much happier if there were vaccines for everyone.
And 1 year has passed since the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic. Our Brazilian correspondent Brian Mir in Sao Paulo recounts how the country has handled the deadly pandemic over this first year.
Today marks 1 year since the first person died in Brazil from COVID-19. After peaking at a little bit over 1,000 deaths a day last August and September, there was a bit of a lull. But what happened is all of the state governments relaxed on their lockdown orders and quarantine orders. They reopened schools, they reopened bars, and they did all of this at a time when over 500 people a day were still dying in Brazil. And so during the holiday season between Christmas and Carnival, there were huge crowds that gathered at drinking parties and things like that on beaches. And a new mutation developed in the city of Manaus that now seems to be 2.5 times more contagious than other strains of the virus. Meanwhile, instead of coming up with any coherent plan, the Bolsonaro government actively encouraged people to not take the vaccine. And even now, the president is still doing Facebook Lives telling people not to wear masks. And the result of this all is that when responsible mayors and governors try to implement lockdown orders to respond to this new wave, which is now hitting Brazil harder than any other time in its history, with the public hospital systems in 3 of Brazil's 5 regions in collapse with no more ICU units. Gangs of Bolsonaro supporters are threatening local officials who try to implement lockdown orders. In the last 7 days, 1,700 people have died a day on average. There's no end in sight to the dilemma faced by the Brazilian people in the irresponsible Bolsonaro government and the mutations that are developing here in Manaus and now a new one in Rio de Janeiro spreading around the world. And this is why Nicolas Maduro, the democratically elected president of Venezuela, called on the United Nations to intervene in Brazil.
We thank Brian for that report. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough, and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomen. Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Chad President Idris Deby has called for unity ahead of the April presidential elections. Deby kicked off his campaign for a 6th term on Saturday, March 13, calling for unity after rival protests were banned and broken up. The first rally since the start of the official election period on Thursday was held by Deby's Patriotic Salvation Movement at a packed stadium in the capital, N'Djamena. On Thursday, 3 opposition candidates quit the race ahead of the April 11 ballot, with one of them saying the climate was not good enough for fair and transparent presidential elections. Their withdrawal leaves half a dozen candidates, including Deby, who was ruled the country since 1990. At least 19 Nigerian soldiers have been killed in a GDS attack in the state of Borno. Nigerian security sources have reported that GDS fighters ambushed a military convoy, killing 15 soldiers and 4 militia fighters. 13 soldiers have also been wounded in the attack. The convoy was on its way to Gundubu Valley for a military operation against the insurgents when it came under fire. The body of late Ivory Coast Prime Minister Hamed Bakayoko has arrived in the capital Abidjan from Germany. Popularly known as Hambak Bakayoko, died in Germany from cancer at age 56, 4 days after legislative elections that went ahead peacefully and handed the victory to the ruling RHDP party. Bakayoko died from cancer on Thursday at a German hospital where he had gone to seek treatment. Bakayoko took over as prime minister in July last year from Amadou Gun Kubuyali, who died after returning to the Ivory Coast from 2 months in France, where he had been treated for her problems. Ethiopia has started rolling out its COVID-19 vaccination program as the country faces a new surge in new cases. Africa's second most populous country last week received 2.2 million doses of the AstraZeneca jab manufactured by the Serum Institute of India and is targeting health workers during the first phase of its vaccine drive. According to the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, both cases and deaths have risen by 11% on average each week in Ethiopia. The East African country aims to vaccinate 20% of its population by the end of the year. Ethiopia has so far registered 172,571 cases of COVID-19, the fifth highest total in Africa and the highest in East Africa.
On one way, we are happy that we are being vaccinated today. On the other hand, the vaccine which is available in Ethiopia is not enough for the whole community. So our community has to wait for some time. So it means the pandemic is not yet over. We're going to have patients coming to our hospital maybe for the next 6 months or so.
Jordan's health minister Nahid Obeidat has resigned after the death of 6 COVID-19 patients at a hospital due to a shortage of oxygen supplies. The country's Prime Minister Bisher Al-Qassani asked the health minister to step down as he was ordered an investigation into the incident. According to an eyewitness, members of the civil defense inside the hospital helped provide oxygen cylinders and resuscitated patients. The man also added that the coronavirus isolation zone in the hospital has just 1 doctor and 2 nurses for 50 to 60 patients.
My father and my mother are at the coronavirus isolation zone inside the hospital, and I was, by coincidence, inside the hospital. Suddenly, the oxygen was cut. When we asked the staff inside the hospital, they say we ran out of oxygen and that they are waiting for an oxygen truck to supply the hospital. We received assistance from the civil defense. Some of them were inside the hospital, and they provided oxygen cylinders, and they started to resuscitate patients, among them my parents.
In Lebanon, riot police have clashed with protesters who were rallying in Beirut to reject the economic policies of the government. The police fired tear gas to disperse scores of people who protest near the parliament building in central Beirut Saturday amid deteriorating economic and financial conditions in the Lebanese capital. In addition to Beirut, there were also protests in the country's largest cities of Tripoli, Sidon, and Tyre, as well as road closures in different parts of the country. Lebanon's worst economic crisis in decades began in October 2019 and has been made worse since the spread of the coronavirus. Tunisia has launched its coronavirus vaccination campaign a month later than planned. The country's healthcare workers will be the first to receive the jab, followed by elderly people and those with underlying health issues. Tunisia received 30,000 doses of the Sputnik V vaccine from Russia and is expecting the shipment of more doses in the coming weeks from China. About 240,000 COVID-19 cases have been recorded in Tunisia since the pandemic started, and 8,300 people have died from the virus.
Bien sûr, si on veut reprendre une vie,
if we want to get back to living a life on the edge of normal, we will have to eradicate this virus, and we cannot do it without vaccination. This is a fact, and it is a reality that should not be denied. So we have to go and get vaccinated if we want to resume our activity, if we want to live normally, because living like this is also stressful.
Vivre comme ça, c'est stressant aussi.
4 people have died and 2 more have been injured after a military plane crashed while trying to land in Kazakhstan's largest city, Almaty. The military aircraft was traveling to Almaty from the capital, Nur-Sultan. According to airport officials, communication with the aircraft ceased at around 5:20 local time. During the landing approach at the military at the Almaty airport, the cause of the crash was not immediately clear. More stories coming up after one last break. Stay with us.
It is our duty to reverse the damage we cause to the planet. Let's recover our natural ecosystems with actions in defense of the environment. Let's keep fighting for a greener world. Wednesdays, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Anti-coup demonstrators has pushed on with protests as Myanmar near its 7th week under military rule. 100 protesters gathered in Insane Township to rebuild a barricade made of bricks and bamboo poles, holding signs reading, "We don't accept military coup." The country has been in turmoil since the military ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi from power in a February 1st coup. Apart from daily civilian protests, a group of elected MPs, many of whom are hiding, are also formed a shadow parliament to denounce the military regime. The junta's security forces have staged daily crackdowns against demonstrators, calling for a return to democracy, deploying tear gas, rubber bullets, and live rounds to quell the anti-coup protests, which has been more than 70 killed.
I saw the fallen heroes give their lives. I don't want to think that I'm afraid and I want to stay safe at home. I'm going out on the streets as a citizen, as a woman, so I want to stand with justice and fairness.
We have to fight for our future. I don't accept the military coup. At the moment, sometimes we are running and hiding from the violent crackdown. I was arrested once, but people came to help me escape from the security forces and I was released.
Pro-democracy protesters have marched in Thailand's capital Bangkok to demand the release of arrested protest leaders. The rally was named March Through the Sky II and is a continuation of the rally held by Pau Dinh, one of the arrested leaders. 3 prominent Thai pro-democracy figures were denied bail in a Bangkok court Monday after being charged with insulting the monarchy, as the government escalates a legal row with a youth-led movement that emerged last year. The protest leaders were arrested in September last year and charged with violating royal defamation laws after holding an anti-monarchy rally in central Bangkok.
Our goal for today's march is to demand the release of our friends, all of our friends who have been imprisoned.
If the police use force against us, we will not retaliate. We only use disobedience. We have no guns and bombs. We have only our smiles and our hands to demand justice.
Indian officials have announced that the country is facing a surge of new COVID-19 cases and deaths. According to India's Federal Health Ministry, the country's total case tally rose to nearly 11,360,000 on Sunday, with the death toll reaching over 158,600. The country's second most populous state, Maharashtra, is worst hit by the pandemic, with confirmed cases now approaching to 2 million to 3 million. In the United States, hundreds of New Yorkers have taken to the streets to mark the 1-year anniversary of the death of Breonna Taylor, a young black woman shot dead during a police raid. On Saturday, Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, led hundreds marching behind a large purple banner with an illustration of Taylor's face, chanting "No justice, no peace." On March 13, 2020, Breonna Taylor was shot and killed in her home by police officers who broke down her door to serve a search warrant. Her death sparked protests across the country and became central to the racial reckoning last summer, with demonstrators demanding racial equality and police accountability. It also renewed conversations about police brutality against black women, who activists say are often overlooked and rarely get justice in their cases.
Breonna Taylor's death, and there's really no justice yet. And her death was really unnecessary. Her life needs to be valued, and it's important to be here and remind everyone that we haven't forgotten and that justice still needs to be served.
especially as a white person, it's really important to stand up and have solidarity with the community and say, this is not right, I benefit from the privilege that I have, and I want to change that so that that kind of inequity doesn't exist. I know that if it was me in that apartment, I probably wouldn't have been shot and killed.
A British police officer charged with murdering Sarah Everard, who disappeared while walking home from a friend's house, has appeared in court. 48-year-old Wayne Cousins appeared in person at London's Westminster Magistrates Court after being charged with the kidnap and murder of Sarah Everard. The 33-year-old marketing executive, whose body was identified on Friday, disappeared around 9:30 p.m. on March 3rd while walking home from a friend's flat. Cousins was arrested on his home in Kent on Tuesday, while the body's victim was discovered in a nearby wood on Wednesday.
The investigation continues, of course, supported by hundreds of officers from across the Met, as well as colleagues in Kent Police. I would also like to thank at this stage all members of the public who have come forward with information or support for the investigation, and would use this opportunity to encourage anyone that thinks they might have useful information to give to get in contact with us.
The UK police has calmed down widespread criticism after cracking down on a vigil held Saturday night for Sarah Everard. Police officers were seen handcuffing and leading women away from the hundreds-strong crowd that gathered in Clapton Common in the evening despite coronavirus restrictions. The official vigil had been called off earlier in the day after organizers said the force had been failed to constructively engage on how it could be in a COVID-secure way. Italy is facing a new wave of coronavirus infections, and the government prepares to reinforce restrictions in most of the country. Schools, restaurants, and museums are expected to close from Monday in most regions, after Italy recorded almost 26,000 new COVID-19 cases and another 373 deaths in the last 24 hours. Health authorities have agreed on new guidelines for the classification for red zones, in which residents are urged to stay home except for emergencies, work, and health reasons. Starting Monday, every region with more than 250 cases per 100,000 inhabitants will automatically label as a red zone. A powerful car bomb have killed at least 8 people and wounded 47 in Afghanistan. 1 among the dead and 11 of the injured were Afghan security forces personnel, while the rest were civilians, including women and children. The death toll in the explosion late Friday that also destroyed 14 houses is expected to rise because of several of the injured were critical. The United Nations condemned an alarming increase in attacks in the country targeting civilians. No one has immediately claimed responsibility for the attack. Hundreds of mourners in Iraq have attended the funerals of 8 people killed in attacks claimed by the Islamic State group. The attacks took place on Friday in a village north of the capital. Among the victims were a lawyer, a policeman, and 6 members of the same family, including 2 women. The Iraqi military said it was a revenge attack ordered by a village resident who had been driven out of the village after being accused of being a member of the Islamic State. IS attacks in urban areas have since dramatically dropped, but Iraqi troops have continued to battle sleeper cells in the country's desert areas.
Yesterday, unarmed forms came and raided the houses and killed 6 people, 4 men and 2 women. Then went to their uncle's house. They killed 1 person. They moved to their house and killed the 8th person. In fact, 8 people have been targeted. The motives and reasons are unknown. The people who were targeted are simple people, and they do not have any problems.
And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.